Hello, everyone. I'm just here to talk a little bit about the idea of microphones and kind of how they work in the context of what we'll be using for this class. I do want to point out there may be some noise in the background. My neighbors are doing construction, which is mildly annoying, but this is the only time I have to put together a short little video. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about microphones. I have one here as an example. There's just a basic microphone, kind of how you would normally see in many instances and places. Uh, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about how they work and why that's important. Uh, so, in a separate video, I talked a little bit about different kinds of waveforms and different kinds of sound that can be made. Uh, so whenever you have any kind of sound, something, in this case it'll be my voice, is causing the air to vibrate in a specific pattern. All right, and the air is full of molecules, although I'll have some diagrams to kind of help show this linked down in a description. But you'll see that uh, as I talk, that's causing my vibrations in my throat are vibrating the air molecules, which then push the air molecules next to them, which then push the ones next to them and them and them, and so on and so on and so on, until you hear the sound. Um, all right, it goes and it'll vibrate parts in your inner ear, which then get translated to your brain, and that's how you understand it. Uh, so essentially, the microphones are acting kind of like an extra ear uh, for digital purposes. Uh, what's going to happen is, generally speaking, there are a few different kinds of microphones. Is if you um, take this and you can just, on most of them, you can just unscrew the top. This is just to kind of help to protect the inside of it and kind of block some noise and wind. I'm just going to set that aside. Um, and this kind of microphone, which is called a dynamic microphone, um, there's this little membrane at the top, and if I were to talk into it, the vibrations of the air would cause a little a coil around a magnet to then vibrate very smallly, very tiny amounts back and forth based on the sounds that it was picking up. Um, so that happened. And then since that coil is moving around a magnet, it generates an electric current, which then gets sent, and you can actually kind of see some of them in this one, down the wires, out the um, pins in the back as a electronic signal. You can then just connect a um, cable to it and then send it to whatever you want. Um, in a lot of instances, they'll just get sent to out and just be amplified so that other people can hear it. In a lot of other cases, particularly with recording and music, um, they'll get these electronic signals will get stored as a value of numbers and then can be saved to a computer um, or recorded onto like a CD or a sound file um, to then be played back out of different speakers at different times or changed and processed in different ways. I mentioned that there were several different types of microphones. This one's dynamic, as I mentioned. To record this video, I'm using what's called a ribbon microphone. Uh, the main difference is that instead of a ring around a coil, a ring of wires around a magnet, I can't talk today. There's a very thin ribbon, how it gets its name, suspended here. And as I talk into it, it kind of pushes and vibrates different parts of the ribbon, which then the signal gets sent out through the cable just the same. So we have that. So as I mentioned, I'll have a diagram to this, but you'll notice that the sound waves, if you look at this diagram, are they have bits of high intensity and low intensity, a lot of molecules together versus not a lot of molecules together. Um, and what this translates to is essentially um, when the waveform is moving up in the diagram, there's um, the coil in your microphone is getting pushed back and it's increasing the voltage. And when it goes down, it goes back, it decreases it, forward, back, forward, back, forward, back, like so. What your computer is then doing is there's being a constant stream of this electrical current coming in, which is then the computer is then taking snapshots very quickly and saying how much voltage is here, how much voltage is here, how much voltage is here, so on and so on. This is what's called the sampling rate. And for normal CD quality audio, this happens right at about 44,100 times per second. So extremely fast. For higher quality things, such as movies, it could happen as much as 48 or 96,000 times per second. It just makes a much, much bigger sound file when you do that. Because, you're essentially doubling or tripling the amount of information per second of audio that you're getting. There's one other important part when your computers are getting audio in, and we're taking these snapshots and saying, hey, okay, where's the voltage at? Where's the voltage at? Where's the voltage at? All these times. And then there's what's called the bit depth, which is whenever the computer takes that snapshot of the voltage and says, what level is it at? It's how many different places the computer can say, oh, the voltage is here, the voltage is here, 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 here. It's checking, and it's essentially rounding off this continuous electrical stream into discrete elements that the computer can then call back. So having a higher bit depth is a more accurate recording. And you'll notice this if you play around with the bit crusher tool that we've played a little bit with in our sampler project, that as you decrease that bit depth, the noise gets a little more crunchy, a little more noisy and jumpy. And as you increase it, it sounds more like it's supposed to. Um, so normal CDs happen at 16 bits. But again, that can go up in factors of 2 to 38, 64, and so on and so on. And again, just like increasing the sampling rate, this will also increase the amount of space that just takes up, the amount of space your sound file takes up. So those are kind of the two main elements in recording this data. And since the computer is taking these snapshots of the continuous electrical current and it's saving them just as a series of numbers in binary, this can be saved in different formats. Wave files, kind of a standard one that's just all the information there. You can kind of compress it and get rid of information for sound frequencies you don't need. That's the basis of MP3 files. You'll notice that if you have an MP3 version and a WAV version of a file, the MP3 will be much smaller because it's compressed a lot of that information that you don't need out of it. So you can then load these files into your computer and process them in any way you want. And essentially all you're doing is changing the numbers. You could be repeating signal, adding stuff, subtracting it, combining different ones. The limits really don't exist with modern computers. So you can do all of that. And so you have your sound file, you've changed whatever you may want to change with it. And then when you're done, what's going to happen is then the computer is going to send those numbers out and convert it back into a voltage, electricity. So it's going to say, hey, here's the number, make this electricity match. It's going to essentially do the opposite of what the microphone and the computer input did. So we have our number, we get our electricity. This electrical voltage then goes out and gets amplified because it's very, very small amounts. Remember, the microphones are moving very smallly. If I take this off again and talk into it, I mean, you're not going to see anything moving inside of this. It's very small movements, very small voltages. So they have to get amplified to be something bigger so that you can hear them on the output. And then, so that will happen. And then those voltages get used to then vibrate the cones of your speakers, either in your sound system, and a concert, your headphones even. Those are very small speakers. Things like that. So that electrical current will travel in and cause the cones to vibrate, essentially opposite of the microphone, and it will reproduce the sound that you initially recorded or may have changed in some way. So that's essentially the basis of how you can record something, store it as a series of numbers, as an audio file in your computer, and then output it out of speakers. And that's kind of the basis of the sampler project that we're doing. We've We aren't recording things for this project. We just kind of took in sound files that were pre-recorded. Although if you wanted to, you could set things up to record. It's a little outside of the scope of this class. But someone has already recorded into a microphone these specific sounds and stored them as sound files. We are then just collecting all of those files and loading them into this project, and then we're applying different effects to change some of these numbers happening that then get sent out the speakers out to our ears. Because again, as I mentioned, the sound source previously was my voice, which is then vibrating the air, causing the microphone to act like an ear and kind of pick up those vibrations. The only difference is now the speakers are like your voice, and that is now vibrating the air that your ears are picking up. So that's essentially the basics of how a microphone works in terms with computer audio. So yeah, I'll just leave this up there for you to check out if you have any questions about that. And have a nice day.